Let me start by welcoming you all after hearing the lunch presentation. How many of you were at the lunch today? Well, we're going to hear something just a little different up here. So I don't know if Mr. Negroponte has joined us or not, but we certainly could get him up to the panel too. Anyways, that's what's great about these conferences. We have a chance to really hear a broad range of thoughts and ideas, which then allows you to go back to your states and implement good works. Let me start by introducing Daryl Bradford, who I think is known to many in the audience. Daryl is the Executive Director of NICAN. He previously served as the Executive Director of Education for Kids, and prior to that spent 9 years with New Jersey's Excellence Education for Everyone. Next to Daryl is Katie Swingle. Katie is the mother of an autistic child and a mentor for parents with special needs issues and to help them navigate planning, treatments, as well as services. Her son is currently a recipient of the Florida Personal Learning Scholarship account that has afforded the family the ability to pay for tuition and other much-needed services for her son. To my immediate left is Senator Scott Hammond. Senator, please.
Thank you.
Senator Hammond was elected to the Nevada State Senate in 2012. Today, he serves as Vice Chair of the Senate Education Committee. Prior to that, Scott was for 16 years a public school teacher, so a person who definitely was on the front lines, and also helped to start a school, the Somerset Academy in Las Vegas. And to my right is Adam Peshek, who is the Director of Choice and Impact for the Foundation for Excellence in Education. Adam previously served as Legislative Director of the Foundation for Florida's Future, Task Force on Education for ALEC, and was a research associate with the Reason Foundation. So we have a very distinguished panel today, and I thank them all for being here with us. I have been involved in school choice for 25 years now, and the promise of choice we felt 25 years ago, the downside case, was that we would help a lot of kids who were trapped in underperforming schools. Today we have 400,000 children who benefit from opportunity scholarships to attend private schools with state money in 23 states in the District of Columbia, to attend schools that adults in their lives have chosen for them. So we've made a lot of progress. I think we also now have begun to prove the case in entire states, in states like Florida, in states like Indiana, in states like Wisconsin, where when you apply a range of different education reforms with scale and with efficacy, you can move results for entire states. So states were 25 years ago and today still are the laboratories to experiment and do works and reforms that we all can learn from. ESAs are amongst the cutting edge of the reforms of choice, and what they allow, for those who may not be terribly familiar with them, the original voucher notion, primarily what the kids benefit from in the legislation that's been passed in these 23 states, is it allows them to attend private schools. But what ESA accounts allow for is a far expanded number and type of services, including tutoring, saving for college accounts, contracting public school support, exam fees, special student needs, instructional and material and curriculum, online programs, really a broad range of different ways a parent could configure a curriculum or education support for their children. These programs today exist in Mississippi, Tennessee, and Nevada, and Florida. They are still quite nascent, but they are something that is being thought about and discussed in many, many states. So it's important that we all try and learn and understand as much about the opportunities as well as perhaps some of the issues and obstacles with ESAs. So Adam, I'm going to start with you, please.
So I am here to talk a little bit about background on ESAs, what they are. I'm actually going to stand up here. What they are, who has them, what the differences are. And before I get into that, I wanted to set up with a little context. So the key here is that parents value different things, right? So a few years ago, the Freeman Foundation issued a report. That was a survey of parents in Georgia, and they asked them to list the top 3 things that they looked for in a new school and why they chose their school, whether it was a private school, a charter school, public school. What were the top 3 reasons why they were looking at that school? And this is a word cloud that looks at all the different things that they chose, with the largest words being the things that were answered the most. And there's a lot of things in there that make sense, you know, better education, better learning environment, but I would challenge that nothing on this list is incorrect. There's nothing on this list that is a wrong answer. It's just that parents value different things. So the top answers were things we expect: student discipline, better learning environment. But other things in there like small classes, college prep. Some people really value their children being around really good peer groups, or you know, having safety is a key issue, especially if your parent coming from a school that's unsafe. So the thing here is that there's no best school. And I think a lot of time policies are trying to approach it, and that we're going to find the best school or we're going to create the best school. There's the best school for the kid. You can be zoned for the best public school, but that doesn't mean that it's the best public school for you. You can be living across the street from a nationally ranked private school. That doesn't mean it's the best private school for you. There's a wide array of different kind of educational options out there, and part of the school choice movement is to try to find ways to connect a child's needs with a learning environment that best suits them. So that's kind of been happening over the past 25 years with private school choice. Private school choice is one of many different choices you can have: charter schools, public schools, online. But to think about ESAs, I think it's important to always kind of think of it contextually and historically. The first kind of private school choice program was a voucher, 1990 in Milwaukee. It's a very simple concept. You take money that was supposed to go to a school, you attach it to a kid and let them go to an approved school. Very simple. About a decade later, we started getting tax credit scholarships, which is basically a different way of funding school choice, in that you allow a student to get a scholarship that's funded by private donations, and for those donations to a scholarship granting organization, the donor gets a tax credit. And these are both different ways of approaching school choice. But these programs are a great improvement over just traditional public school zoning, where it's very zip code based, and it's determined, frankly, on your income level in most cases, where you live, and how you can escape that school. But Milton Friedman wrote a long time ago. Milton Friedman, if you don't know, was kind of the pioneer of vouchers. And he wrote that vouchers are not an end unto themselves. The purpose of vouchers is to enable parents to have free choice, and the purpose of having free choice is to provide competition and allow the educational industry to get out of the 17th century and into the 21st century. So kind of an anti-Negroponte quote. So, you know, and Freeman went on and said, you know, why don't we just have partial vouchers? Why not allow parents to take a voucher and get math at one place, science at another place? And this is what education savings accounts in a lot of cases are attempting to do. So, you know, Bill kind of touched on this. What are ESAs? ESAs, if you want to think about it, they're kind of a way of funding school choice, primarily through vouchers, though you could fund it through a tax credit. No one's done that yet. But through these programs, a child's education funding is deposited into an account that parents can manage and kind of direct to the right schools, programs, services, individual courses, that's best right for their children. So the key here is, unlike traditional school choice programs where you're choosing between school A and school B, the key here is that you're able to customize. You can do all of it at school A if you want. You can have a child attend a private school and get some therapy on the side if they have a special need. You can have them educated at home and use an online course for math and science. Teach them yourself in history and English. Get a tutor. You can save some of this for college education. And so with ESAs, the conversation is no longer use it or lose it. It's kind of you have an account and you direct it to the funds or to the purposes that you think are the best fit. And it kind of moves the conversation from school choice to educational choice. So we're not talking about schools anymore. We're talking about how do we educate the kid in a way that best fits his needs. And frankly, this is what wealthy families have been doing forever. And kind of that whole not use it or lose it situation anymore is why ESAs kind of embrace kind of very basic economics. So for the first time, parents now have an incentive to be cost conscious when it comes to K-12 education. And this chart kind of simplifies a very simple, basic economics 101 principle is that you can either spend your money or someone else's, and you can either spend it on yourself or someone else. So now, if you think about it, public schools are in this bottom right category. You're spending someone else's money on someone else. I am a school administrator, and I am going to take someone else's money that I've never met and create an education plan for someone's child who I'll never meet. And under this situation, you don't really have an incentive to economize, to get the best bang for your buck, or frankly, to customize and make an education that works right for kids, because you'll be doing it for thousands of kids. Now, charters, vouchers, tax credits, they move over to this bottom left where you're spending someone else's money on yourself, and that's a good improvement. But I would argue that there's really still no incentive to economize here. It's still a use it or lose it proposition. If you are a school that charges $6,000 for tuition and a voucher program comes along and says, you can get $7,000 voucher or the price of tuition, whichever is less, what are you going to do? You're going to raise your tuition to $7,000 because you'd be crazy not to, and there's nothing nefarious about raising your tuition. You'd be leaving money on the table. The parent has no incentive to have any kind of consumer actions in here because the only person that loses are really taxpayers or the government and they're not really going to be quibbling over $1,000. So ESAs start to move into this top left category, which is really important. Now that extra $1,000 for tuition is going to make a difference. You might not raise your tuition from $6,000 to $7,000 because if you have a $7,000 ESA and you spend $6,000 on tuition, that $1,000 now makes a lot of difference. You can use that to save for your child's college. You can use it for tutoring. You can use it for therapies if you have a student with special needs. And there's a number of different ways you can use it. So it kind of brings K-12 education into the real world. And so where have ESAs come? So Bill touched a little bit. The first was in Arizona in 2011. Since then, Florida created their program in 2014, and Mississippi, Tennessee, and Nevada all created programs this year. So it really has been the year of ESAs. There's been a lot of work going on in the past 2 years on education savings accounts. In addition to that, the light blue states, or the less dark blue states, are other ones that had bills filed this year. So 16 other states, from what I've seen, have also filed bills this year. Some of them have gone very far, gone to the governor's desk and been vetoed. Some have gone and passed the chamber and not done the other. So there's been a lot of work going on, even though there's only 5 states. So the different states, this is kind of the breakdown. Though there's only 5 states, they're very different in each way they work. So the kind of the big bucket areas when it comes to student eligibility, Florida, Mississippi, and Tennessee limit it to students with special needs. Arizona, the first program to create an ESA, they started with special needs, but since then they've expanded to include students in failing schools, students who are from a military family, those who were adopted to the foster care system, Native American reservation, or siblings of participating students. So they've slowly grown there. And then what Senator Hammond will talk about, Nevada created kind of not only the most expansive ESA program, probably the most expansive school choice program ever created in the country, a nearly universal program for the only prerequisite is that you had to have been in public school the prior year, coming into kindergarten, or be a military family. So somewhere between 93% or so of the Nevada population will be eligible for this program starting next year. So back to the prior public. Florida is the only state that does not require prior public. So all the other states require that you come directly from a public school to get an ESA. Florida took a different approach, and they say if you have a disability, if you have a doctor's kind of affidavit that says that you have this disability, you're eligible for the program also. So that's kind of a unique situation in Florida. going through some of these, the administrators is also a big issue on who's administering these programs. 3 of them, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Arizona, are done at the Department of Education. Nevada is being done by the Treasury Department, and Florida is also unique in that it's a non-government agency. Nonprofits are actually running the program in Florida. And then, so there's a lot of other issues, but I think the key thing to see here is why this is the year of school choice. Between Arizona, Florida, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Nevada, by my calculations, there's going to be about 1 million kids eligible for an ESA in the fall of 2016, with about half of them coming in Nevada. So in terms of school choice programs, the fact that we now have 1 million kids eligible for a choice program after really kind of 2 years, aside from Arizona, over a 2-year period, a significant, maybe 750,000 kids will be eligible for an ESA on a very short period of time. So this is something that people are really looking into. It's something that's kind of really interesting to us. There's a lot of different kind of things we can talk about through the Q&A as far as how to implement these properly, the kind of things that need to be looked at for states going into this. And if you have any questions or you need resources as far as model legislation or policy advice, anything like that, we're here to help. Because we're looking at this now. There's no experts in this field yet, but we're learning more and more each day, and we're learning from lessons learned from the states that are doing it now. And you know, Senator Hammond's going to have a lot to say, I think, on what's going on in Nevada. So thank you.
Senator Hammond.
Well, can I speak from here then? Can you hear me now? All right. It's hard to, first of all, it's hard for me not to smile when people keep talking about Nevada and the number of kids we're having here. You know, I've always admired people like Barry Sanders. When he would go in and score a touchdown, he'd just hand the ball off the referees and walk away, because his dad always said, hey, just act like you've been there before. But when people when your name is called, that's the first time that's ever happened, and so it's hard for me not to smile a little bit. And when people talk about Nevada being at the front of an education policy, it's hard for us not to smile. You know, those of us from Nevada, and there's several of us here from Nevada. And I appreciate their attendance here. There are a lot of people I could be thanking for this program, but I tell you, I'll just go back and tell you that the reason why I push for this is because even though I've been in a public forum for years as a public education teacher, I really understood the significance of wrapping an individual education around a child. We have been working hard at that in the public sector for a very long time. We've always been taught in the classroom, make sure you try to differentiate your instruction, make sure you try to hit the low, the high, the kid who learns by hands-on, the kid who learns this way. And I always thought, well, wouldn't it make sense if we just allowed the kids to figure out what works best for them? It'd certainly save a lot of time and effort on our part. I sometimes felt like the hamster going around in that cage, in that little circle thing, going around and around for no purpose whatsoever. You know, when you take administration courses to get your administrative endorsement, one of the things that they ask you is, you know, think about this. If you're starting a school or a school district, you know, you have to have a mission statement. What are we? You know, who are we trying to get at? And, you know, these larger questions. And you know, I kept coming back to, wouldn't it be a lot more simple if you just had a kid say, who am I and what do I want? And then have them go out there and get that. And that's what we achieved with the ESA program in Nevada. It's a program that really has a lot of accountability issues built into it. The Treasurer's Office is doing a great job of making sure that they put the regulations that will help with accountability as far as money, but also accountability as far as what the students are, the outcome of the student, you know, what the students are going to get when they get finished. We have certain testing that is required, but we also have requirements, the fraud aspect of it. We made sure that we, you guys, I have people here in the front row who are nodding to make sure I don't say anything wrong, but making sure that, you know, we are giving quarterly installments. We're shutting the program down over the summertime, unless, of course, a parent comes to us and says, this is what we're going to do over the summer, and they get special permission. We have random auditing going on. There are just a lot of little features in there because we want to make sure that we're good stewards of the public money. But at the same time, we still think that we are giving an opportunity for parents to ask their child, their student, what do you want out of education? And then they can collaboratively work with that parent. All of a sudden, we've got more parental involvement. We got parents actually saying, okay, what do I need? What's out there? How can I get the right service for my child. And one of the things I keep talking about when I go to certain functions and people ask me, or when the news asks me questions about the ESA program, they said, so your main goal is just to make sure that private schools flourished and functioned and they had more money coming into them. And I said, not necessarily. That's not, my objective was not to take money from the public sector and put it in the private sector. Far from it. I'm not here to be the savior of the private schools. I do like private schools, though. And I think private schools should be around, by the way, just for the record.
I feel terrible I missed the lunch.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to go anywhere. Matter of fact, I'm hoping that we get better and better. My goal was to come up with delivery of education. And it's going to be in a lot of different forms. The ESA has given birth, a platform, if you will, to people who are going to come up with the best ideas for the delivery of education, something they have been missing. Now we have an opportunity to say, well, I can deliver education this way. You are going to see kids going out there going, you know what, I'm going to get up tomorrow at 8 a.m. because I got a tutor coming over to my house. I got 4 or 5 friends coming over. We're going to do algebra for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, because we really like algebra. Nobody in my family, but it might be somebody down the street. And then, after that, we're going to go down to I've got to walk down the, 4 or 5 blocks to the YMCA because I have a swim class. That'll satisfy my physical education. And then maybe I'm going to go up to an observatory and take an astronomy class because we have a group, every Tuesdays at 1 o'clock. We spend about 2 hours in astronomy trying to get that down because that's the passion that student has. That's the beauty of an ESA. We're going to start seeing education wrapping around what the child wants, loves, and buys into. The component that we're going to be working on is educating parents on what an ESA is. That's the thing about an ESA program. There's like 2 things that always come to mind. First of all, people say, well, do parents, customers want an ESA program? And I kind of think of it as, and I heard this analogy even last week, it's kind of like the Apple iPhone, or any kind of Apple product. People didn't know they wanted it until they explained what it does, and they went, oh yeah, I want that. ESAs are very much like that. An ESA is sort of the operating system, and then all of a sudden people are going to come up with all kinds of apps that will, you'll be able to use the operating system for. And so now you've got people going, well, yeah, I want an ESA. I walk around the streets or get phone calls from people. I get a lot of phone calls from residents, not only in my district that I represent, but throughout Nevada. And they say, well, so what does an ESA do? And as soon as I explain it to them, they go, well, yeah, I want that. I said, well, good, because you got it. Now you got to use it, because we want to make sure we have it. Then the next question I always get from a lot of people is, okay, that's a great program. It'll never get through. How do we, it'll never get through legislatures because it's just, it's too controversial. And luckily, I can stand before them and say, we did it in Nevada. I went through the wall. Thank you. Well, one of my favorite lines in one of my, I like sports movies and I like sports analogies, but Moneyball. He said when he was sitting there talking to now I'm going to blank on his name now, Billy Beane. Is sitting in front of the owner of the Red Sox, and the Red Sox owner says, look, Billy, you were very innovative with what you did over there in Oakland. And he said, but that's what happens with innovators. The first ones through the wall always get a little bloody. But that just makes it easier for everybody else. And that's what I'm hoping I did, because I think this is the year and the time of the ESA. An idea whose time has come is hard to combat, and that's what it is. It got through in Nevada, not just because of what I did, but because it was an idea whose time had come. And we had a legislature that was fully supportive of that. And I have many of my colleagues here, and I thank them. I had a governor who was very supportive. When he signed that bill, the only thing he said to me, and he put it on the bill, he said, Senator, congratulations, history. And that was the only thing he placed on that because he understood where we were going in the future with this, and we were setting a precedence. And I'm thankful for a treasurer's office who's been a willing administrator of this program, and we're working hard to make sure that we get all the regulations in there that I think are necessary. So those are some of the thoughts that come to mind. I don't know how much more time you want me to take, so I'm not going to take any more time because I think that shorter is better.
Thank you, Scott. Katie?
Need to stand.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. This is a really big honor for me to come and tell my family's story and let you know how the ESA, or in Florida we call it the PLSA, has helped my family in ways I never could have imagined. My hope for you today with seeing me and hearing me speak is that you'll go back to your states brave, like the senator here, and try and do something for families like mine that you have in your states that don't have the option that we had. So I just wanted to, I'm going to try. I have never gotten through my speech without crying, so I'm going to try really hard. Though I did this morning, it still didn't work. I'm going to try again. Okay, so I'm the mom of 3 boys. My oldest son, Gregory's 7. He has autism, apraxia of speech, which is a neurodevelopmental disorder of the facial muscles, so speaking was very difficult for him. We were told he would never speak. So we started learning sign language at 18 months. We did intensive speech therapy. From there, the diagnosis has just kept coming, one after another, and things got more and more dire. And my husband and I just did our best to try and keep up with it, keep up with whatever therapy was being offered, and then we came to kindergarten. And I'm a big public school proponent, so I got a big IEP ready, and I was a big advocate for my child. At this point, I wasn't able to work anymore. Gregory's needs were huge. I was in speech here, we were in occupational here all week. My life revolved around taking him to his therapies to get him where he could function. We got to kindergarten, and I had this strong IEP, and I was really excited, and it was a disaster. And I always say that I never blame the public school because my county, Lee County, Florida, where we were, worked so hard to try and find a spot for my child. And it just wasn't there. He can't be in a mainstream classroom. He can't be in a special education classroom. And he's so happy and he's so excited for school. And it was going to drown that. I was going to kill it. And so after about 2 weeks, I said, I'm pulling him. I can't do this. And in the meantime, my husband had a career change. We moved up to Tallahassee. I find this little small school, private school, Woodland Hall Academy, where the woman has a dyslexia program, and they also work with some other different kinds of children who have multiple disabilities. And I decided to take Greg over there just to get some updated testing. And they just wowed me with what they thought that my child's potential was and what they thought he could do and how far he could come. And then I saw it was going to be $28,000. That's tuition plus all of the therapy, because he was then diagnosed with severe dyslexia, which had somehow gotten missed. And when I say severe, I go, oh my God, how did I miss this? So I signed him up. I knew we wouldn't be able to afford more than one semester. My husband is an attorney, but it's a second career, mid-career change. He became one at 30, so we're not made of money. And like I said, I couldn't work, and I have 2 other little boys. So we took money out of our IRA at a penalty. We begged our parents, and we put him in. And I said, well, 1 semester's better than nothing. And then I found out about the PLSA in October. And my principal came to me and she said, I heard about this new program, and I think you might qualify. And I called my husband on the way home at work, and I said, look into it now. I'm in the car. I want you online. I want you calling them now. And we fit the criteria because of his diagnoses, and we got our money, and it paid for the 2nd semester. So it was huge for us. My child, I'm not sure if I know how to do this. I have another slide here. That's Gregory, by the way. I kind of have some pictures of him through the years, and it's sweet for me to see him because I miss him. It's been a couple days I haven't seen him. And he is a really good boy, and I am just so excited about the progress that he's made, and it's almost all been possible this year because of this PLSA, because he's in the right environment. And I truly have hope now that we will be able to return to a mainstream classroom maybe within the next 5 years or so. That is a hope I never had. When I pulled him out of the kindergarten and after those 2 weeks of the nightmare, I thought we were done. I thought I was going to have a child I was going to have to take care of the rest of my life. We didn't have any hope, and now I have hope. So this was just I just put down what our PLSA is. It allows parents, a different kind of scholarship. The PLSA is different than other state scholarships, and it allows parents to personalize the education of their children with unique abilities by directing money toward a combination of programs and approved providers. These include school tuition, therapists, specialists, curriculum, and technology. So for us, my husband and I, Matt, we chose tuition. But for other parents, they might be okay with their IEP in the public schools, but they might still need some extra speech therapy or occupational therapy. Or maybe they have their child in a parochial school, but they just need a little bit more that they just can't get. Those PLSA funds could be used for ABA therapy, which, if any of you are familiar with the autism world, is applied behavior analysis. Extremely successful, extremely wonderful, extremely expensive, and extremely frightening to parents because you know your kid needs it and you know you can't afford it. So that can be used for that. I want to show you an example of Gregory in the first, this is last year. We went in for the entrance test at Woodland Hall just to have some testing done. You can see on the first example one, that was April 29th. I brought him there. We just moved 2 weeks prior. And he could not do any sort of dictation by word, by reading, by hearing, nothing. The second example is him trying to do the alphabet. He was 6. So if any of you know about standards, we are talking behind. March 5th, 2015, not even a year later. He has amazing teachers. He did that all by dictation. They just sat with him and worked with him. And if that doesn't tell you that when your child's in the right environment, with the right with the right trained teachers, with the right other students, with everything aligning, and that doesn't show you that that's going to bring outcomes, I don't know how else to tell you that this is going to work. You just have to be strong enough and willing enough to put it forth before everybody and show them that kids are unique. My kid has autism, but that doesn't mean that your child has autism. Every kid needs a little something different. We needed Woodland Hall. We got it, and luckily, thank God for Florida, thank God for our PLSA, that is paying for half of it and helping my husband and I out, keeping our son where he needs to be. It's made a huge difference for our lives. Matt and I have hope where we once did not have hope for this child. I love him dearly, but I really didn't know what was going to happen with him. So I think that was all that I did. But I hope that I want to put a face, I want to put a story behind these PLSAs, ESAs, whatever you want to call them, because they are changing lives. They changed our lives. There is a story behind each and every person who gets to be a recipient. And so far, at least in my experience, it's been nothing but wonderful.
Thank you, Katie, for sharing that with us. Daryl?
Wow. So I want to kind of build on what Katie said with a couple of things. The first one is just that choice, to me, is both an economic and a moral force, that when you give it to people, they use it to create their own realities, right? I mean, like when somebody picks something, they're literally bringing a new universe of possibility into existence. Like, the power is cosmic, which is why people don't always want you to have it. And I say that because I grew up in the same neighborhood that Freddie Gray grew up in Southwest Baltimore. And by the grace of God, I never went to any of the schools Freddie went to, which is why I get to be here with you today, and the foundation continues to make the mistake of inviting me back, right? So you can never disassociate the impact of helping a child get the education that they need to get so they can become the person that they are actually supposed to be, from the disruptive power of the policies that you need to implement to make those things happen. So I just want to throw that out there. Now for the thing that we're actually here to talk about. So I'm a huge fan of ESAs because I'm a huge fan of disruption. Actually, like at 50 CAM, which is like the network I work for, all the EDs have nicknames, and my nickname is the Disruptor. And so when I talk to people about why I like things like policy things or economic things or consumer things that actually fundamentally change the way people interact with things, I have 2 examples that I really think get on it. And I just want you to know, when I talk about state change, has anybody ever seen, ice on the street turning directly into just raise your hand if you've ever seen that. How many of y'all from above the Mason-Dixon line? Okay, a couple people. How many of you guys know what ice is? I just want to make sure. So that's called sublimation, right? And that's where you go from one state of something to another state of something without going through the state in between. And that power is amazing, right? The skipping stage, like what has to happen to get there is like incredible. And I view this policy option as an expression of that skipping stage. So like two important examples of this in the world. I happen to love music. I'm a big fan of music. And so Napster, to me, age check on the audience, is like the state change agent, right? Because you had the record store, which was dope if they had what you wanted, and terrible if they didn't have what you wanted, right? And the record store and going to the record store was a pretty like hardwired ritual. You know, you kind of loved it, you hated it, it was expensive, but you know, you'd buy an album that had one song on it that you liked, and that cost $14.99, and 15 songs that sucked came along for free, right? The economic model of it wasn't optimized, you know, whatever. And then Napster wrecks the whole thing, just doesn't ask for permission, and is introduced in a way where all the things you get on the other side are things no one would ever countenance not having now. More speed, right? More customization, more curation, better discovery, right? I mean, Shazam. Does anybody have Shazam? Do you know what Shazam is? Shazam is the bomb, right? Like, I remember when so I lived in Manhattan for a long time, in case you weren't able to glean that. And there was this one night when I was out at a bar, which also should not surprise you, and there was a song on the radio. It was like a song on the 6-disc changer that was playing music behind the bar. And I'd heard the song before, and I was desperate to know what it was. And I went over to the bartender, and he stopped the music. He took the CD out and he showed it to me, and it was just like orange. It was like postmodernist orange, like no name, like whatever. I'm like, thanks for that, dude. I appreciate it. Now I would just hold my phone up, and my phone would tell me what it is, right? So we unleashed a creative consumer power, and it gave us more creativity, more customization. It made it closer, and it utterly transformed both the way people buy music and the way they interact with it, and you can never put that back in the bottle. That's the one example. The other one, my other favorite thing is Uber. I love Uber. Talk about Uber all the time. Uber's the bomb, right? So, so I work in New York, and I actually was writing a piece about how Uber and charter schools in New York are essentially like different expressions of the same disruptive power. And it's not just about like choice or about price, because Uber tends to be cheaper than cabs, you know, and it's not just about speed and location, but and this is the thing I think is really interesting. It let us use technology and choice to get at race, because the car picks you up no matter where you are and no matter what the color of your skin is. And I say this as a person, like, I've been pretty lucky. Like, normally there's a tall blonde or a redhead who will hail the cab for me. Like, now I don't have to worry about that. I just take my phone out, the cab comes to get me, right? So it's sort of like a joke, but this was real. Like, this was real stuff. If you wanted to get a cab, or if there were certain places that you wanted to go, you couldn't get there. Like, you couldn't get there. And Uber helped us deal with that, much in the same way that, like, I would say charter schooling, and I'm a board member of Success Academy in the city, like, we educate you no matter where you come from. That's the deal. That's the mantra. That's the mission. Like, we're the Uber of education in that respect. And so, in looking at both of these examples of how people like interact with things, we introduce sort of like choice customization. We unleash something that is powerful and disruptive, and then how people interact with the thing afterwards is totally changed. Like, ESA to me is like the top of that pyramid, because, and I think Adam said it earlier, we go from buying schools to buying education, right? And we go from sort of accepting like a linear view on what education is to creating one that is like, has multiple touch points, and it is like vastly more customized and curated by a parent. The last thing that I would just say on this is really about like the markets that grow out of these things. And then eventually, I mean, I know we're going to talk about regulation and everything. You know, like Nevada does not have a lot of private schools, right? Right. So just to sort of hop on to your point about like, you're doing this just to send money to private schools, whatever. What it does have, like, even though it does have a lot of private schools, it does have a lot of opportunity, right? Because like, we've never tried sort of full scale to involve everybody in the customization and ownership of their kids' education. Normally, someone else owns it for you and you rent it. An ESA is you owning your own education, right? And it triggers a completely different level of interest, thought, knowing, power, empowerment from the consumer, the parent, the student. So I'm excited about the policy option. I don't know how we're going to pass it in the Northeast, but I like windmills, and I have horses and lances, and I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you, Gerald. So I have a few questions for the panelists, and then we'll open it up. Let me start, Adam, with you. If you could talk a little bit about accountability and about how these programs are going to be administered.
So on accountability, I think with kind of the new ESAs, we need to kind of think of accountability in a new way. Test-based accountability has been the norm with schools, because with schools, it's kind of easy to be able to tell how a student's doing. They're getting all their education in one school. With an ESA, there's a parent, Kathy Visser in Arizona, that I point to where, her son is getting homeschooled by her in some subjects. She's getting tutored by a dyslexia coach in some areas. He's getting physical therapy. He's getting online courses, doing a vast number of things. The only way to be able to tell how we're going to hold accountable those vendors is by making each of them take a test, which is ridiculous. So I think, Darrell said he liked the Uber model, and I think the Uber model has a lot of things that we can look to on accountability, where in an ESA program, I think the next generation accountability, where you have real parent accountability, is for administrators, instead of trying to hold each vendor accountable for based on a test, have parents be required to rate their experience with vendors. I like to say parents know best, and a lot of people in this room say parents know best. Let's use what they know to create real accountability by saying, if I'm a parent and I'm going to give money to a tutor and they're going to tutor my son, I'm going to have to rate them to see how they're doing, so other parents who come along afterwards are going to get off, based on my experience, see how it is. And that's kind of what Uber's doing. Uber, you basically, before you take your next trip on Uber, you have to rate your last driver. So it's getting the kind of crowdsourced rating systems are helping drive accountability. And secondly, I think, the rating systems are going to help in a few ways in that. So for instance, let's look at Yelp. So city departments of health for a long time have been struggling to get out health ratings, the restaurant health ratings to people. They post them on a window. Sometimes people see them. No one goes to websites to look at what health ratings are. It could be an A rated in New York, a restaurant a B or a C. You really don't know. But what some people found in some innovative cities like San Francisco and New York, they found that they could basically find an algorithm based on people's ratings and comments on Yelp, where they made a model where they have 80% accuracy, where they can tell whether or not a restaurant is going to have a health violation based on the ratings of other people. So this is an incredible crowdsourced thing that's happening, and it's gotten to the point now where Yelp has noticed city governments have noticed how powerful this is, that Yelp is now partnering with some cities like San Francisco and New York to actually post a health rating on the Yelp page. So the big problem in kind of school accountability now is that you have the rating, but parents don't know how to access it. If you had an ESA website where all parents went to look at vendors, rate them, and they had simultaneously all the other metrics that could be seen by parents, you would actually have real accountability because you'd be empowering parents with information they didn't currently have or they didn't used to have. So that's, to me, the next generation of accountability, is really taking parents and their experiences and kind of crowdsourcing that for other parents.
And how do you think that's going to work with legislators, though, feeling comfortable with that kind of level of accountability?
So I think test-based accountability is so strong that in a lot of states, so for the, a lot of these programs that are now out there, test-based accountability doesn't make a lot of sense, especially when you're talking about very specifically disabled children who test-based accountability is usually based on how they are compared to other children. And talking to autism advocates, they'll tell you that one autistic kid is like one other autistic kid. There's no other, they're all individual students. So using a norm reference test to compare them to other kids, it's useful information for the parent, but I don't know if it's useful information to hold accountable vendors. I think that legislators are gonna have to get used to it because that's how we operate everywhere else in our life. If you go to Amazon, you're not going to go and look at what the government did or, what the government rated it. You're going to use the experiences of other people, and that's going to guide your decisions. And so far, that's worked out very well in every other aspect of our life. But to say that we have some kind of top-down solution to be able to go through all the nuances that ESAs bring to it, I think that that's a faulty idea. And on top of that, I think ESAs are also going to help lawmakers. Every day you'll see a story, oh, there's not enough music education, there's not enough arts education. With ESAs, you don't need a full committee to discuss the importance of arts education. You don't need to go out there and get votes to support the initiative. You have to convince a parent that arts education is important, and that music education is important, and that history is important, because those are the things that can't be tested that are important. And this is actually going to be a way to directly impact the parents and say, if you like music, come to us and take music. Don't worry about this community school board process where you have to have 10 people up there pontificate about what's right and what's wrong. You ask the parent, and the parent's the ones getting the services. And I think that's, in general, the best way to go, and that's why I think the Yelp or Uber model is the best way to hold them accountable.
Thanks, Adam. Senator Hammond, what was the discussion in Nevada, given that it is universal, around whether low-income parents will have the time to be able to put together customized kind of education plans for their children? Their lives are, day-to-day difficult. So being able to really access these and use them, is there kind of a bias here for middle-income families and upper-income families, given that, or not?
No, that's a great question, and it did come up. People were wondering, how are we going to make sure that people, the parents know that these options are, one, out there, and then two, what are their options? The discussions we've had, so far there's been sort of a nonprofit answer to this. We've had nonprofit organizations who have put people on the ground. They're out there communicating to some of the lower socioeconomic areas in Las Vegas, and I believe also they'll be starting up in some of the northern areas as well. But eventually there'll also be that private sort of sector response to it, where if you have a delivery of education that you would like to use in Nevada, you're actually going to be able to go out there and communicate, much like you would if you were selling a cell phone. I've used this analogy before, and some people have criticized me for it, but when a parent comes up, and this happened during, I think, the very first workshop that we did, the treasurer put on a workshop, and we had 5 full rooms, both in Las Vegas and in Carson City. And one of the very last speakers got up and said, the research shows, and I'm not sure about the research, I still can't find all the research that shows it, but parents don't know how to make choices for their kids. After we waited until everybody booed and hissed and did all that stuff, then she got up and she continued talking about how the parents just don't know how to get out there and find out what's best for their child. And I said, look, the way I look at it, parents spend a lot of money. I don't care in what neighborhood you go into. Parents spend a lot of money on a few things. One of them are cell phones. What is the best cell phone for me? What is the best cell phone plan for me? And just as Adam spoke of, they rely on certain websites to go and find out what other people have said about a certain phone or a plan. They rely on their friends, their neighbors. And you look at what's happened just with cell phones. At first we had use it or lose it minutes. Then you eventually had rollover minutes, and now you have universal minutes, because people kept saying, well, this is what we want. And this is the consumers who are wanting it. And I don't care what neighborhood you go to in Las Vegas, everybody's going to have a phone. Almost everybody comes out with a phone. Even the kids who are in school are coming out of the classroom, starting to make phone calls as soon as they get out of the classroom or when they're on recess. And so, it's out there. People are going to find out because, again, there's a nonprofit response to this, and there's also the private sector response to it, and that is, we have a product. We need people to know what it is, and we'd like them to be able to access the product, because now they have the money and the ability to customize the education. So they'll find a way to make sure that those parents know about it.
Thank you. Daryl, do you think ESAs will help or hurt other forms of choice?
So I want to answer that, but I want to say something else about what you just said before about discovery. And I want to go back to the sort of music analogy about this. So, like True Blood. Anybody here watch True Blood? Used to watch it. A couple people. Somebody in the back. Thank you. Or there are lots of shows on TV that have like amazing soundtracks. And sometimes I want to know what the songs are. And so I use Spotify specifically for this purpose. I'll go and I'll be like, True Blood, whatever, or I don't know, The Blacklist or something like that. And someone will have curated all the songs that are on the show, and then I can listen to the playlist. And in video games, you have a lot of the same thing. It's like, you know, what's the best build for this guy to do this thing in this patch of the game? And there'll be like a website that you go to, and it's like, you pick these 5 skills, you get this weapon, and you will roll fools. The same thing is going to happen for ESA. Somebody's going to be like, look, my kid has a penchant for arts and math, and someone will curate what that is supposed to look like. You know, I put this together for my kid. It was great. It's going to be on a website someplace, right? You're like, I need the math arts build so that my kid can roll 4th grade, right? And that's going to be out there. So I just think that'll be something emergent that is new in terms of how people normally look at building education, because normally they would just identify the best school either via test score or because someone they knew went there and they would take that person's word for it, which is basically like the Yelp analogy, which is also the way rich people do it. In terms of how this evolves choice or other kinds of choice, so I think this was the premise, that in the end, the best thing would win. This is why we do this, right? And so in a marketplace where we empower people with customization, but don't exclude the prior options, I think we wind up getting the most of the best option that people want. If people want more customization, then we'll see like fewer charter schools, private schools, whatever, you know, because if people love online, we're going to see more of that. If there's a healthy mix, like we'll see competition between the sectors. Like we'll probably see some sort of like co-opetition among, like, you know, this charter school is like, look, we got good this, this, and this. We don't do the arts thing so good. Or like, you know, Duolingo does this better. You know, Rosetta Stone does this better, right? And then like they're articulating out with ESAs, and they're changing their own price structures accordingly. So to me, this is just like, you know, you have a place where you're trying to figure out how to regulate things, but you're really just trying to unleash the force of, you know, customization on the whole sector. And in the end, like we should get what we want, which is that the parents dictated what they wanted, and we empowered them to be able to find the things that they wanted to.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add something to that?
Sure, yes.
And you're actually seeing this not only in the private sector, you're seeing this in the public sector. You're seeing the evidence that choice is having on public education. In Las Vegas, for many years, we had magnet schools that were very popular, but we had very few of them. Now, all of a sudden, you see in the last 6 or 7 years, we've had a huge movement in charter schools. We've had several charter schools move into the area, and we're talking about having even more move into the area. And I think as a response to that, you've seen the public sector say, well, we see that parents really like, or students really like, this type of education. We're gonna open up 5, I think it was like 5 new magnet schools in the area, which is public education, and yet it's specified towards the particular like or desirability of a student, because they want to do aviation, or they want to do nursing, or they want to do, you know, more vocational, and so that's another direct result. And again, the market will change according to what people want.
Let's open it up for questions now. If you would please state your name and your organization, and then ask your question, please. Step right up to the mic here, unless there's some in the audience. Please, yes, use the
I had to
use the
see
mic.
her. Are we talking?
Yeah.
Ms. Swingle, they passed you over on that question. I'm a state legislator in the state of Arkansas. This year, we just passed a bill allowing a scholarship funds for children with severe disabilities without a dissenting vote in either chamber or in committee. Complete bipartisan support. The one issue that always troubled me about this bill was parents. you and your husband are obviously educated people and can make intelligent choices, but you also have experience with other parents. How about picking the right environment for the children? What do you think about parents doing that, and how much do you think the state should intervene as far as accrediting different organizations for different types of children? I'd really appreciate your views, ma'am.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's a really good question. Yes, my husband and I are blessed, and we're both educated, and I once my child was diagnosed, I started advocating the second, I needed to. But I know that not everybody is as lucky as I am. And that's why I've served as a mentor and a peer mentor. People who have children who have special needs, autism specifically, I can answer to, are close. We get all of our answers from each other. Autism Speaks, if you look on Facebook and you were to put autism moms, you would get 4,000 groups. We only know each other, and we only talk to each other. So our doctors might give us a few recommendations here and there, but almost all of our recommendations are going to come from each other. So like, they were saying up here, it's going to come from us, me finding out little things online about Woodland Hall Academy. You should go take a look. Okay, I did. And now I've spread the word, and I've told other parents they need to go take a look. And it just keeps rolling from there. Now the state needs to come in and say, okay, well, Woodland Hall Academy is going to be a vendor for us. They're going to be able to be paid via the PLSA. Let's take a look. And Woodland Hall Academy has to kind of show that they are doing the right things, that they're not just taking the money, and all of that, is not my purview of expertise, but there are a lot of different ways that schools and vendors and therapists can show that their standards are high and that their kids that they work with are achieving, other than just a standardized test. But I really we have to put more faith in parents. I know what people are talking about and who they're thinking about when they're thinking about these parents. You're thinking about your lower income parents, like you said, barely making it day to day. They don't have time for research. They don't have time to go look on what's the other side of town. They don't have time for phone interviews. They don't have time for any of that. They don't have the wherewithal, or even they don't have the confidence. But that's where we have each other. And I will tell you, no matter what, the poorest, uneducated, autism mom is on Facebook, and she's in a group. I promise you that. And so we have each other to rely on and learn from and talk to about all these different ideas and all these different vendors, or, if that's the word that's kind of going around now, of what they might be able to do for their child. And it increases their confidence so much. I've seen it firsthand when their child starts to succeed, and it's because of decisions that they made.
Hi, Ethan Demi from Pennsylvania. I run an education publishing company. I'm also a homeschool graduate, so I'm the result of a mom who didn't have a college degree raising her kid, and I guess I turned out okay. I like to think that
game is good too.
Yeah.
One of the concepts is this, Daryl, you talked about Napster being this disruptor, and I think we do have a model that you can actually look at that's before the ESA, and that's the homeschooling movement in America. We've got over 2 million students currently being homeschooled with almost no oversight, and in some states, zero oversight, and the kids are actually turning out fine. How does the ESA's programs, how can those start to affect and start to bring some of the benefits we've had in the homeschooling world, but now with the advent of essentially allowing that to be subsidized, giving additional resources, spreading that value out? How can ESAs and homeschooling sort of come together and really start to change education?
Can I say something? And then can you talk? Because I know you had a very interesting experience about this in Nevada. So Mike McShane, who is like a genius, and he used to be at the American Enterprise Institute, he and I were just together a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about this. And we both basically were like, the Napster step could be ESA plus homeschooling, which is just a way to like accelerate a choice that people seem to be making at a much higher clip. I think like the growth amount, like I can't remember where I saw this, but the fastest growing like demographic segment of homeschooling, I think, is like Black parents now, which is like also phenomenal. So to me, it was just like a way to like support, supplement what was already going on, and accelerate it by actually adding to it. I just can remember small anecdote of this. I was working in New Jersey. A parent called me up and wanted to homeschool and was like, well, I just saw this virtual school thing, but it was in Pennsylvania, right? And that was the kind of thing where if we'd been able to, like you break state lines, whatever, you get, we'd have had an explosion of it in New Jersey. So I think they are perfect for one another in a way that would very likely get many more people engaged in customized school at home, if you don't want to call it homeschooling. So.
And I'll just add to it, he's right, your sock game is on point. I'll say this, in Nevada, we did have an interesting thing, maybe I'm going to ramble here for a second, but we all know that in the homeschooling, what's the word I want to use, universe? How about world, the homeschool world? What we have, you have people out there, and this is what's funny to me, because the more I read about this, it used to be that people's perception of the homeschooling typical parent was sort of a conservative, they don't want government in their lives, and then we're going to go our own way. And I think that we're starting to see trends that it's not just the conservative, suburban or even rural area person saying, I want to control, take back control of my life and my children's life. It's everywhere. You're seeing that in the Black community as well. You're seeing people say, even people who have embraced. I think they worked in Silicon Valley. They're all saying we've got to find different ways to educate. We have different ideas for educating our kids. So in that way, I think it's going to continue to be disruptive, and come up with new ways to educate, and maybe things that the ESA can incorporate or co-opt later on into their programs. The reason why I say that is because in Nevada, what happened was we had a very robust homeschooling network who said, look, we like your ESAs, but we're going to say no to them because we're worried about the state and federal entanglements. We don't want anything to do with state money still, although there are people who do homeschool and would love to see this program. And so we came to a compromise. We basically said, this is what held me in a Senate Finance Committee for a long time, because the members of the committee kept saying, so is this open to homeschoolers? And I kept looking at them going, yes and no. And they kept going, no, we want more. What? We want more than that. And so finally somebody from the compromise was struck, and somebody from the home school network came up and kind of explained what I was meaning to them, because I didn't want to step on toes. It's a very, very polite community of people, but they're very adamant about what they want. So what we did was we struck a compromise. We said, look, if you still declare to the state of Nevada that you're going to be a homeschool parent, then you are not eligible to receive any ESA money. If you do not declare, then of course you are eligible, as long as you meet the other requirement of 100 days in public school prior to gaining access to an ESA, then you are eligible to have access to an ESA money. And of course, what they're doing with it is they're finding programs, they're finding curriculum, they're finding something that helps their children out. And what I'm seeing more and more in Las Vegas and in Reno and in some other areas is it's just not one mom staying home with a few kids, or one dad staying home with a few kids. It's groups of people who are trying to find ways to educate their kids, and so they're using that. They're going out and saying, okay, well, what's worked for other groups? And then they find out, well, this curriculum right here works, or I would bring a tutor in for this area of education, or maybe you need to do this, or we organize trips to certain museums in the area. So again, that's we bifurcated it basically to make sure that we still have a really robust homeschooling network that doesn't want anything to do, and they're out there exploring different ways to educate. And of course, the ESA, I think, programs will be able to benefit from that, or the ESA operating system will be able to benefit from it, because we'll be able to launch a new app, so to speak. They'll find new ways to deliver education.
I'll add one thing. ESAs, we have these now kind of concepts of what different things are. School is you go and you have your teenagers show up to a brick and mortar building before the sun comes up, and then they stay there until 2 or 3 hours before the parents get off of work, and that's school. Oh, and you get 3 months off for vacation. That's school, because that's what we've developed it to become. And homeschooling is this thing where you're completely apart from it. And by the way, I think homeschooling enrollment has grown 60% over the past decade or something like that. So whether or not you want parents to decide or not, they're doing it. So I think ESAs are going to help blur the lines between these things, where if you feel like you're comfortable educating your child in history and English, you can do that. You can use online programs to help supplement that, or you can do part-time school, or you can do a number of different things that this whole construct of this is what schools are is really not that long. I mean, it's been 100 years or so since we've decided that these are what schools are. And as far as like parents know best, I was in Nevada, in Carson City, for the first, so it was the state treasurer's office rule-making workshop, Friday morning, 10 a.m. I can't imagine anyone in their right mind who would want to go to this thing, okay? It's, who wants to go to this? You were there. And they kind of did the two different sides. You know, no one sees this in the paper and is like, oh, that's great, I want to go to this. But between these two cities, hundreds of parents showed up to give their input. Hundreds. I mean, Grant will tell you, Grant Hewitt from Treasurer's Office, I had to leave because my plane was leaving, but like 3 hours into it, they were like halfway done with parent comments at a state treasurer's office rulemaking workshop. So the idea that parents aren't interested in these things, I think, is a little bit of a misnomer. And the customized learning plan, I think, so we talked about low-income parents and, you know, can they choose what's best for their kids? Again, I think this is also why we need to have these systems that are getting the input of different people and how they've experienced it, because if a low-income parent can go online and search through thousands and millions of flights to find the cheapest one, the best one to get them there when they want, to say that we can't have someone on there who can use the experience of other parents to say, oh, I need to find a tutor, I need to find a school that's right for them. We just haven't found the right way to do it because we've said, parents, this isn't your responsibility, this is the state's responsibility. And we've given them no tools to be able to find the ways to find the best schools. But that's starting to change with things like Great Schools and Noodle and ways that you can find, based on the experiences of others and others' kind of state objective criteria, to help them build a plan for their kids that they do in other aspects of their life. So I think it's more of a, not that parents can't do it, it's that the state hasn't allowed them to do it ever. And now we're actually allowing them to do that, and we need to give them the tools to do so.
We have time for one more question.
Sam Teasley, and state rep out of Georgia, and direct this question to the senator there, and if any others can jump in here as well. One of the concerns we have in Georgia is, you know, I come from a metro district where the teachers are not going to overthrow me. This is an issue I would be willing to go home over. But if you're in a more rural community where the school system is the leading employer in that county, they're a lot more sensitive to what the school superintendent in that area and so forth would say. I assume you dealt with similar issues in Nevada. What advice would you give to legislators who want to see this kind of reform, but also have colleagues for whom are not willing necessarily to go home over this, and they're getting pushback from their local school systems?
That's a great question, because I can say it's an idea whose time has come all I want, but the political reality is, how do you actually get it through? People always ask me, how did you get it through? And I use analogies like, well, I'm supposed to say this because if you're ninja, you're not supposed to say you're ninja. But, you know, we'll just say you're stealthy. I was very stealthy in this. And you know, I mean, we had very long committee hearings, but I'll tell you, every time we hit a bump on the road, I didn't throw a fit. I didn't go yell. I mean, some people legislate differently, and I just don't do that. I kind of went and talked to certain people and kind of there were a lot of groups that were helping me out. I mean, I did not do this by myself. There were a lot of legislators helping me out. There were a lot of groups who helped me out. And they went and they kind of smooth over in certain areas where they had expertise or they knew this group or that group. One of the things that were missing in the hearings, and it was conspicuous, an absence of minorities coming in and saying they wanted the ESA. But what we've done so far, or since then, and this will help out, I think, future legislators who need to go through the wall that's already opened up, is we've done a lot of polling. And while we may not have had a lot of minorities show up and say, hey, we'd love an ESA, we have had that since then. Matter of fact, most of the preliminary news stories that came out right after we passed the ESA in Nevada, most of the people that were interviewed were either Hispanic or from black communities, especially East Las Vegas. Schools in East Las Vegas saying, we're gonna really grab onto this. We want to promote this. People in our area want this. And so we've built up a large support group in those areas, and the polling has been outrageously in support of what we're doing. And so now you have legislators who maybe they didn't like the program, but they see that their constituents like it, and so they're saying yes to certain aspects of the program. When certain financing comes up or certain decisions made on the implementation and monies are needed, I'm starting to see that some of the the colleagues that of mine from the other side of the aisle are starting to say, yeah, we may not like it, but we're gonna vote yes to start the implementation of it because they see it as being wildly successful. So really, you gotta win that ground game. That's the thing. You've got to win the ground game.
Can I top off the senator's comments real quick? Like, I promise
You
I'll do it
always
fast.
do.
I'm trying to.
Daryl,
I'm trying to.
we're out of time, though. But come on up and talk to Daryl afterwards. Let me just thank you all again for coming. This is a very important topic, and we're going to be watching. We're all going to be watching to see how the ESAs do across the country, and it's one of the great opportunities we have that we can do worthwhile experiments in our different states. So eyes will be on the states that have already started this, and let's hope it turns out to be a really terrific reform and improves the outcomes for the kids who are in these programs. Thank you.